What's up, your boy, for another reaction. In today's video, we have The Coach That Killed the Dynasty by JSA Sports. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let's get into it.
He was by far the smartest football mind I've ever been around. The things he was teaching was so far ahead of what others were teaching. I can't think in my history of coaching of any assistant who came into an NFL franchise and made the immediate impact that he did. Ringing endorsements from established football men for sure, but what if I told you
Them niggas glazing? What the fuck?
that the man being lauded with praise here is responsible for taking what should have been a dynasty and running it into the ground? If I asked you who the most destructive coach in NFL history was, you'd probably answer with something like Urban Meyer, Les Steckel, Nathaniel Hackett, etc., etc. Those aren't bad answers, but allow me to make the case for a man who actually won over 62% of his games as head coach. But before we take that deep dive, I need to take you back to the turn of the millennium.
St. Louis, the gateway to the West, is now the gateway to the best football team in the world!
In 2000, the St. Louis Rams were on top of the world, having just won their first ever Super Bowl, headlined by one of the most dominant offenses the NFL has ever seen. Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall of Fame running back, Hall of Fame left tackle, Hall of Fame wide receiver. The 99 Rams scored a tick under 33 points a game en route to the Lombardi Trophy. The man leading the charge was Dick Vermeil. 19 years prior, Vermeil led the Philadelphia Eagles to their first ever berth in the Super Bowl before falling to Oakland. Now, after 40 years in coaching, he finally got his ring. 2 days later, he decided that was enough and retired, citing the desire to spend more time with his family, though he would come to regret this decision. Now, Vermeil is like the nicest guy ever, so even if speculation were true, we'd never hear it from him, but it does need to be stated that there is a rumor that he was quietly forced out by the Rams organization. Why would the Super Bowl champions do that, you may ask? Well, their offensive coordinator was by far the hottest commodity on the coaching market, and the Rams really didn't want to lose him. Now, I have no hard proof to back this up. It is, of course, strictly speculation, but as we'll come to see, the details do add up. In any event, the Rams would be successful, promoting the OC to head coach to supplant Vermeil, which brings us to this story's main character. Meet Mike Martz. Martz spent the first decade of his career bouncing around California colleges as an assistant coach before working his way up the NFL ranks, becoming the Rams' offensive coordinator in 1999. His offense's dominance made him the obvious top head coaching candidate available, and when Vermeil retired, Martz took his place in 2000. St. Louis entered the millennium with a new head coach and new uniforms, which, if you ask me, were a massive downgrade. Nevertheless, the Rams' offense got even better in 2000. Marshall Faulk and Torrey Holt led the NFL in rushing and receiving yards, respectively, with the former winning league MVP. The problem is that their defense regressed from among the NFL's best to the absolute worst, giving up nearly 30 points a game. St. Louis finished the season.
Damn. What the 54 to 34?
10-6 after a 6-0 start, settling for a wildcard spot. Against the Saints in the first round, the Rams trailed 31-7 early in the fourth quarter before a furious rally from the offense got them within a field goal and set to get the ball back with under 2 minutes left.
Get it back with plenty of time left after the punt, which is fair. Caught it.
Bro.
Yard line and then fumble at the 11-yard line, and who had
That happens a lot, bro. Fucking punters dropping like the ball, like
the football?
punt returners dropping the fucking ball like they ain't.
The Saints.
Come on, gang.
Until that happened. The Super Bowl hangover struck the Rams down in the first round. Now, this season isn't an indictment of Martz, but it is important to lay the groundwork given what's coming next. With that in mind, let's proceed. 2001 is the last bite at the apple for the greatest show on turf. Another season averaging over 30 points, another MVP for Kurt Warner, a 14-2 season. The addition of Lovie Smith at defensive coordinator catapulted the unit back to among the league's best. and the Rams were the runaway favorite to win the Super Bowl. In the playoffs, they hung 45 on the Packers and scraped past the young Eagles to reach the big dance. Super Bowl 36 against the upstart Patriots shined a light on the first crack in Mike Martz's armor: stubbornness. The key to St. Louis's win over Philly in the NFC Championship was Marshall Faulk, rumbling for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. You'd think 28 would be the key against New England, whose run defense is very comparable to Philadelphia's, but no. Faulk's
Niggas ain't run the ball.
carries were damn near cut in half in a low-scoring Super Bowl against a Patriots defense that was practically daring the Rams to run the ball. Alas, Martz lived and died by the 7-step drop, and the Rams mounted a comeback too little too late to fend off the first of many of Tom Brady's legendary game-winning drives in the playoffs. If Martz gave Faulk more carries, then the result is probably different. Instead, the 0-1 Rams suffered the biggest upset loss in the Super Bowl since the '68 Colts. The 2002 Rams
Marshall Folk, that's such a legendary name. Like, that name's so hard.
became a team defined by injuries. Both Marshall Faulk and Orlando Pace missed time while Warner and the offense crumbled, and this is where Martz comes into play again. Remember what I said earlier about living and dying by the 7-step drop? Well, this is where it really came back to bite him and Warner. The 7-step drop works really well if you have a strong offensive line to allow you to get to the setup point, but otherwise the quarterback is DOA before he can even get there. So I'm sure you can imagine that when the Hall of Fame left tackle and Pace missed time early in the season, Warner found himself seeing stars more often than not. In 6 starts, Warner was sacked 21 times. Had he played the whole season, he would have been on pace to be sacked 56 times in 2002, an astronomical amount which would have led the league if not for David Carr's historic 76 sack season with the expansion Texans. Martz spent the 0-2 season leaving Warner dead to rights, which dug St. Louis into an 0-5 hole which they could not dig out of, try as they might. The dagger to their season was a 49-10 beatdown against the Chiefs, coached by none other than Dick Vermeil. So, did Vermeil really just get burnt out for a bit and decided to come back after just 1 year off? Or there is a rumor that he was quietly forced out by the Rams organization. I'll leave that up to you, but anyways, we're not done with Warner yet. In Week 12 against the Eagles, Warner broke his hand in a 10-3 loss. The next day, Martz announced
Nigga Warner getting killed. The nigga, they doing it to Kurt Warner ass.
that he had ordered Warner to get his hand x-rayed, much to the chagrin of the 2-time MVP. Said x-rays revealed a hairline fracture, which wouldn't demand surgery but would sideline Warner for 2 weeks. And since Mark Bulger, the backup who was 5-0 in Warner's place, is also injured, third stringer Jamie Martin would take the field in that aforementioned slaughterfest in Arrowhead. Alright, problem solved. We all cool? Yeah? Cool. Just kidding. 2 days later, Kurt Warner's wife Brenda went on a radio show and straight up called Mike Martz a liar, claiming that she, a nurse, was the one who insisted Warner get x-rays, not Martz, who apparently insisted that his hand was only bruised. That's as far as that story went, but I have a hard time believing that Kurt Warner's wife just one day up and decided to call her husband's owed head coach a bold-faced liar, so draw your own conclusions there if you must. 2003 would be the swan song for Kurt Warner in St. Louis. In a Week 1 loss to the Giants, Warner suffered a concussion and fumbled 6 times as a result. After the game, Martz made the decision to permanently switch to Bulger at quarterback. The decision seemed to be a good one, as Martz showed how good his offense could be with a healthy QB. Bulger was a Pro Bowler despite his 22 interceptions, but his offense was second in the NFL, and the Rams earned a bye week with a 12-4 record. In what would be the last ever NFL playoff game in St. Louis, the Rams found themselves trailing 23-12 with under 3 minutes left, before a touchdown and subsequent onside kick recovery gave them life. 2 plays later, they were at the Carolina 26 with just under 2 minutes left and a timeout in hand. Now is the time to strike against a reeling Carolina defense that has been on the field for nearly 5 straight minutes of game time. Instead, Martz gets ultra-conservative, letting the clock run down while running low-risk, low-reward plays and settling for the field goal, with one of the best offenses in the league. A modern-day coach would cringe at this. Jeff Wilkins knocks through a field goal at the buzzer to send the game to overtime. The Rams lost the coin toss and could only watch as Jake Delhomme marched down the field in short order. The Rams season hinges on a 40-yard field goal attempt. Scratch that. The Rams season hinges on a 45-yard field goal attempt. Okay, for real this time.
They're not going to call it. Here comes the kick to win the game. And the kick is up, and it is no good. He hooked it, and the Rams get a life.
Plot twist. The Rams are resuscitated despite Martz not electing to use a timeout to ice the kicker. They get the ball back before stalling at the Carolina 36. Now it's the Rams' turn to send out the field goal unit with a chance to end it, this time from 53 yards.
And here is Wilkins' kick, and this kick is going to be short.
The Rams would get the ball back and drive into Carolina territory once again, but Bulger's third interception of the day killed that drive's momentum. Delhomme and Steve Smith put the dagger in on the first play of double overtime. Obviously, it would be foolish of me to pin this whole loss on Martz, but I can't help but feel like this game would have ended differently if he got aggressive after recovering the onside kick and having every ounce of momentum you could conceive of. This season would prove to be the last hurrah for this era of Rams football. Following the season, Kurt Warner's divorce from the Rams would be official, being released on June 1st, 2004. But real quick, let's go back to that. Yes, Warner's play hit a wall hard in his last years in St. Louis, and they were winning games with Bulger, but it doesn't seem like it should be easy to just dump a quarterback who's won 2 league MVPs and a Super Bowl MVP. And you're right, it's not. If a team straight up cut a future Hall of Famer like that after just half a season's worth of games while playing through injury, you are prime for criticism. Well, guess what? Mike Martz agreed. As it turns out, during Warner's final chapter with the Rams, Martz was in cahoots with St. Louis sports writer Bernie Miklasz. Miklasz would act as Martz's mouthpiece, smearing Kurt Warner every chance he had in exchange for insider information. He described Warner's broken hand as a, quote, crippled claw. He claimed that Warner never owned up to the fact that he was on the decline.
Dang, niggas be weird. Like, what? Dang.
Rams coach apparently mocked Warner's Christian faith in front of his teammates, and Miklasz very suspiciously omitted the name of the perpetrator. This is some extreme coward behavior on behalf of Martz, but nonetheless he got what he wanted, the green light to move forward with Bulger. 2004 proved that the golden age of the St. Louis Rams had come and gone. They regressed on both sides of the ball and fell to 8-8, though that was enough to snag the top wildcard spot in a putrid NFC. They even won a playoff game against the division rival Seahawks, but then promptly got 47 points dropped on their dome by the Michael Vick-led Falcons. In 2005, after a 2-3 start, Martz took a leave of absence to tend to his health. This didn't stop him from
was the coach for so long?
Trying to call offensive coordinator Steve Fairchild from the couch during a game to provide a play call. Team president John Shaw shut that down, though. Martz announced that he was cleared to return to coaching just in time for the Rams' final game of the season on New Year's Day 2006, but the Rams didn't let him and promptly fired him the day after the game. That debacle spelled the end of Mike Martz's NFL head coaching career. He had a few stops as an offensive coordinator, though. He went to the Lions, where John Kitna was sacked 51 times in 2007. The players complained about his unbalanced offense, and he was fired. He went to the 49ers in 2008, where his 2 quarterbacks got sacked a combined 55 times, and then he was fired. His last pit stop in the NFL would be with the Bears in 2010, who reached the NFC Championship, though it was despite a below-average offense that saw Jay Cutler, you guessed it, get sacked 52 times and was also not allowed to audible. In 2011, their 3 quarterbacks were sacked a combined 49 times. How do you think Cutler felt about all of this anyway?
I mean, even as he stepped up, he just sort of stiff-armed his own guy.
God, I love Jay Cutler. At season's end, Martz would resign, signaling the end of his NFL coaching career. He would hold a clipboard one last time in 2018 as head coach of the San Diego Fleet of the ill-fated AAF. So, what do we make of all this? First, let me make this clear. Do I think Mike Martz is a terrible football coach? No. His offense was revolutionary. If you ask me, his greatest show on turf transformed football into the passing league it is today. He was very clearly a bright football mind. He did win a lot of games as head coach, though you could argue it was because of the bounty of Hall of Fame talent that he inherited when he got the job. However, he was a bad NFL head coach for a few reasons. The less obvious one was his apparent lack of people skills. It just seemed like no one liked the guy. I imagine most of his quarterbacks who got killed under him weren't very fond of him, shout out Cutler, and the arrogant tag followed him for his entire career. This is something you can get away with if you're a coordinator, but not an NFL head coach. But second, Martz's downfall leads back to one word that tends to be the downfall of many failed men in business: stubbornness. He would never give up the 7-step drop, and his quarterbacks got killed as a result. In 165 games where Martz was a head coach or coordinator from 2000 to 2011, his quarterback...
What the fuck was them niggas doing? Grab the ball, bro.
Quarterbacks took a staggering 490 sacks, an average of about 3 a game.
What was these niggas doing? Who was y'all drafting? I wasn't drafting no fucking O-line. Like, what the fuck?
His signal callers were routinely at or near the top of the league in sacks taken, with 2006 John Kitna being the coup de grace, being planted into the grass a staggering 63 times. It bears repeating that Martz's scheme can work with a great offensive line that can let the quarterback get to the setup spot. It worked when Orlando Pace was holding down the fort, not when it was Frank Omiel. His complete refusal to change his offense to cater to his quarterbacks would be his undoing in the NFL. It also needs to be noted how turnover-prone his QBs were. It became common for his signal callers to have seasons of 20 interceptions or more, with his guys leading the league in a season multiple times. So no, Mike Martz is not the worst head coach of all time, far from it, but he might be the most destructive. This is a man who inherited a roster loaded with Hall of Famers on offense and took over the reigning Super Bowl champions. His pure neglect of the quarterbacks he coached played a key role in his downfall, and it makes you wonder what he could have accomplished if he just made key adjustments to adapt to the teams he had. Could his quarterbacks have been more effective and successful? Well, I'll let Kurt Warner answer that question.
When nobody else believed in us, when nobody else believed in me, you guys did, and we're going to the Super Bowl!
Oh, I forgot that nigga was the quarterback for that Cardinals team that went to the Super Bowl, yeah. Man, it was a good video. Make sure to comment, subscribe, and look.